Part 105. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1044. Chapter 1041 Gretel, I change, Sister Uge, help me. If it were the most beautiful creature that Gretel had ever seen since traveling through time, it would undoubtedly be the silver dragon. That streamlined body. Those scales that are as brilliant as silver. Those strong and powerful muscles. That thorn is like a spear or a sword, pointing straight to the sky. Breaking through the clouds and fog, flying high, bending his neck and spitting out a mouthful of ice mist towards the ground, the overwhelming physical power and magic power are simply unparalleled. Greet always remembers that the silver dragon fell from the sky and fell in front of him, with his breath dying and no heartbeat at all. He and Bernard tried their best to perform DC cardioversion. The scales looked extremely thin, but it took a long time to use a dagger to break through the defense. Gretel always remembered that the thorns and skin on the dragon's back looked extremely cold from a distance, but felt warm when he held it. Leading him forward in the lake, he stepped on the dragon's back with his bare feet, and the hard dragon scales felt strangely warm. Gretel always remembers that when looking through the instruments in the Dragon's Nest Hotel, the silhouette of the silver dragon was stretched into various lines, but even so there was a smooth beauty. Gretel always remembered that when facing the holy flame of the glorious Holy Sea, those wings were tightly wrapped up, blocking out the fatal danger. Save a bed of silver coins for her, build a dragon nest for her, earn gold coins for her, and learn the art of dragon flying to fly alongside her. What he really wants is, even one day, even for a moment, he could turn into a silver dragon and fly high in the sky with her. I want to become a silver dragon. The silver light skyrocketed. The wind blew violently on the meadow. In an instant, the grass blades on the ground shook, their roots broke, and they flew outwards. In the center of the grass blades, the cold mist rolled, expanded, and continued to expand in size. Every trace of mist was coated with a thin silver light. And the place where the silver mist is the densest rises and shrinks, rises and shrinks. It seems that there is an extremely huge creature that is struggling to breathe and try to stand up. Even the scene in the secret eyes began to waver. Archmage Heinz, Archmage Jennings, master and disciple looked at each other, and saw surprise and solemnity in each other's eyes. What is Greet doing? What is Master Nordmark doing? What does he want to become? He must not screw it up. Transfiguration, especially the first one, is the most prone to problems. The Lord of Thunder is not here, not even anyone from the Thunder Horn is here, and there is no high-level mage in the transformation department. If something really happens, their master and apprentice may not be able to handle it. Quick! Get the secret eye closer. I can't get closer. The image has been distorted. Now I have to zoom out a little further to see clearly. It's better to go directly there. Don't worry about the secret eye. No. Our undead aura is too strong and will interfere with him. Contact the tower spirit and Archmage Abate. The person taking care of you there is a level 16 elf, a servant of nature. There are differences between the transformation spells of the transformation system and those of the natural system. Archmage Abate may not be able to handle things that the elves can't handle. The elf can't guarantee that he will be able to handle it. Ashu Isong stood upright on the edge of the grass, her body shaped like a spear or a sword. He pursed his lips, clenched his hands into fists, tried his best to relax, and tried to gather the natural atmosphere around him. Gretel, don't mess around, don't mess around, you can't change a creature that's too strong, you're not at a high level, you can't hold on, it's easy to get into trouble, go back, start with the leopard. She was nervous, and the others at the edge of the grass were even more nervous. Lin hugged Mr. Trochka tightly, drawing his arms inward, which made the black cat feel a little uncomfortable. If it weren't for the fact that cats are full of liquid, I'm afraid they would have screamed loudly and waved their claws. The black cat didn't struggle or attack, but it still held Lin's arm firmly. The pink and tender claws exerted force, and a plum blossom pit was forced out of Lin An's skinny arm. Bernard took 2 steps back and leaned against Appa. The man leaned on the deer, and the deer leaned on the man. The man's shoulders pressed against the deer's chest, and he subconsciously began to push against the cow. Unconsciously, both Bernard's feet and Appa's forehooves began to sink. Only Cyrilla's eyes lit up. The silver dragon girl subconsciously took a step forward, breathing rapidly. He opened his arms and waved them, as if he wanted to turn into a silver dragon, and suddenly he woke up again. Holding both fists, cheering Gretel up. Gretel, you can do it. You can do it. Work harder. Work hard. When you get better, we will fly together. Greet had no time to think about yes or no. Nature guided him and pushed him to undergo his first independent change. And the autonomous magic power in his body is spinning, boiling, filling the changing framework. Skeleton. Muscle. Scales. Thorns. Wing. Skin membrane. The huge figure of the silver dragon appeared on the grass. From the head, to the neck, to the body and tail, just one stop already occupies more than half of the grass. Stretch out your wings and raise them gently. The huge wind pressure blew away the silver mist in an instant, revealing a silver dragon that was as huge as Cyrilla's true body, maybe even a little bigger. He wants to turn into a silver dragon. How dare he turn into a silver dragon? Archmage Heinz suddenly stood up, his face ashen. Silver dragon, adult silver dragon, the spell to transform into an adult dragon, that is at least 8 levels. You need a level 15, maybe level 16 archmage, and you have to be proficient in this area to be able to cast spells normally. Gretel is only level 10. Level 10. Even if the natural priest has a bonus in terms of transformation, if he forcibly casts spells beyond many levels, he will be in big trouble. Let's go there immediately. No, wait dash. Archmage Jennings grabbed the teacher. After just such a delay, the scene projected by the secret vision screen changed again. Gretel. Cyrilla's face was full of surprise, she put her hands to her mouth and shouted softly. Before he finished speaking, the huge silver dragon suddenly deflated as if it was leaking air. Shrink, shrink. From 20 meters to 10 meters, from 10 meters to 5 meters, from to 1 meter. The silver light faded and the silver mist dispersed. The huge body of the silver dragon that was showing off before seemed to be held up by the boiling silver mist. When the mist cooled and condensed into water droplets, it naturally shrank in size. Height decreases, head shrinks, tail shortens, wingspan shrinks. Finally, what appeared in front of everyone was a miniature silver dragon that was only 1 foot tall and the size of a cat. Gretel was completely stunned. He had just successfully transformed, and before he could be happy for a second, a wave of weakness suddenly hit him. Then, the line of sight began to drop sharply, lower, lower. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Oops, too ambitious, not enough level, not enough magic power, can't hold on anymore. Gretel wanted to lift the transformation spell, but he had just turned into a silver dragon, and his magic power seemed to have been drained, and he couldn't even release the most basic spells. He wanted to run, but as soon as he took a step out, he tripped over the fragment of the burlap robe and fell to the ground with a splat. After finally getting up, he could only flap his wings, whip his tail against the ground, and spin around on the grass. He raised his head, turned to Ash Moonsong, and tried his best to scream for help. Sister Uge, save me. Woo. Sorry, shut up now. Why is the cry of the young dragon so pitiful? It's so destructive. Lin. Mr. Trochka. Bernard. Appa. Silver Moon Deer pushed forward hard. The barbarian was staggered by the push, and he took 2 steps forward and almost fell. "Why are you still carrying me so hard?" The steps of the 2 archmages stopped. The next moment, Archmage Heinz moved to the left, Archmage Jennings moved to the right, and quickly operated his secret eyes. "Quick, quick, quick. Record it. Put the secret eye closer. Closer. Be sure to record them all. Don't miss it. Don't miss every angle. It's a rare sight. The Plague Lord's young dragon, no, a young dragon, no, an extremely reduced version of the adult dragon form. She is still wobbly, not very good at walking, falls to the ground, and screams. This must be recorded. Take it to Black Crow Swamp and store it in the tower spirit of the Sleepless Tower." When His Excellency the Immortal saw it, he was probably laughing so hard that he leaned back and his skull was broken into 23 pieces. Ash Moonsong started running as fast as the silver dragon shrunk. 1 step, 2 steps, 5 meters, 10 meters. However, the speed of her running could not keep up with the speed of the silver dragon's transformation. Watching the blades of grass swaying, one, appeared on the bare grass. By the way, this thing is considered a young dragon, a baby dragon, or a smaller version of an adult silver dragon. Ashuedge tried her best to sense Gretel's situation, and subconsciously turned back and glanced at Cyrilla. "Hey, real silver dragon, what do you think?" Cyrilla stayed where she was, with her hands clasped in front of her chest and her red lips slightly opened. His eyes were moving, and he couldn't tell whether they were frightened or surprised, as if he wanted to laugh a little bit. However, whether it was fright or surprise, AI-11UGE did not feel any concern or worry from the silver dragon girl. This also made her relieved. Greet's current situation should, at least, not be dangerous. Well, if only Gretel was there, it might still be dangerous. He had just completed his transformation, couldn't cast spells, couldn't fight, and couldn't even control his body well. If you can't run fast or jump high, even if you don't get killed by a predator, you might roll down the hillside and break your own neck. But with so many people around, I'm not afraid anymore. On the flat grass, with someone protecting you, there will be no accidents. Ash Moonsong looked up first to make sure there were no hawks circling in the sky, and there were no flying predators that would suddenly swoop down and snatch Gretel away. Then, he slowed down and walked over cautiously. "Don't be afraid," she said as softly as possible, soothing the cat version of Silver Dragon who kept flapping its wings and was a little flustered. "You have become very good, your shape is normal, there is no problem, you can't fly or walk because you haven't gotten used to it yet, don't worry, calm down, everything will be fine, let me help you change back," etc. Cyrilla rushed past her like the wind. He stopped, bent down, and picked up the miniature silver dragon into his arms. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1045. Gretel is in Cyrilla's arms. Gretel was helplessly wrapped in Cyrilla's arms. Gretel covered his body with his wings, buried his head under the wings, and huddled in Cyrilla's arms helplessly. Cyrilla's eyes were bright, one arm stabilized Gretel's cat-sized body, and the other hand touched from head to back, from back to tail, and then started from the head again. Ah, so cute. So cute, so cute, so cute. These delicate little horns. These delicate scales. These smooth wings. Gretel is so cute. Such a small dragon horn is only half the size of her little finger. Blunt and round, silvery white with a little light blue lines, and the top is a little translucent. Such thin scales. Piece by piece, they were smaller than the smallest rice beads on her necklace. It feels smooth and delicate, and a little cool. Such tiny claws only took up a small circle in the center of her palm. Put it on her hand, and carefully put away her nails, for fear of scratching her skin. Gretel is the cutest. The cutest and cutest. Hug. Rub. Holding the wings, he lifted them up and rubbed his forehead with his forehead. Cyrilla couldn't put it down, holding Gretel in her pocket form. Ashmoonsong circled her several times and stretched out her hand several times, but she couldn't get in. Lin held Mr. Trochka and stood a little further away. The face of the normally calm necromancer twitched, as if he wanted to laugh out loud, and finally gave himself a mechanized mind with a backhand. Bernard and Mr. Valenchimo had turned their backs silently. Bernard buried his face in Appa. The bodies of the tall savage and the tall silver moon deer trembled to the same frequency. Archmage Heinz and Archmage Jannings have both teleported over. The master and apprentice, one on each side, quickly approached and stretched out their hands to Cyrilla. Don't hold him like this, being in a state of lack of magic power for a long time is not good for him, leave him to us and take him to the meditation room of the Institute. Just meditate for a while to replenish the magic power. Greet, you. I don't want to go with you. I don't want to go with you. If I fall into your hands, God knows what will be done to me. Maybe they will just put me in plaster and take a cast. When I return to Nevis next year, a life-size pillow in my dragon form will be sold on the street. This farce lasted for a long time before it stopped. Cyrilla held Gretel in her arms, squatted in the meditation room, and watched him slowly recover. Then Ashu-Isang carefully guided him back to his human form and gave him a severe lesson. Do you know how dangerous you were just now? You challenged yourself to a transformation that you are not familiar with without authorization. Well, judging from the results, you are not unfamiliar, but it is a transformation that is far beyond your ability. How many people died here one step at a time? How dare you lose your focus during the transformation? How dare you lose your focus? The transformation has started, and you have the guts to suddenly change direction. I don't want to kill you. You become half dragon, half leopard, I'll see how you end up. You dare to act recklessly even if you are not strong enough, in the end, you just shrank into a little dragon. Of course, I really love you so much. But Gretel, it is very dangerous to rely on good luck. There will be no next time. Greet was wrapped in a thick blanket and curled up cross-legged on the bed, listening and nodding. Holding a cup of sweet hot cocoa in both hands, he lowered his head and inhaled one mouthful at a time. The aroma was overflowing. Alas, the transformation that failed just now was so exhausting that I felt like my body was hollowed out, let alone trying to transform again. Even the simplest spell casting would probably require a day or two of rest. Mage Nordmark? Mage Nordmark, is it convenient to speak now? Polite knocks and inquiries sounded outside. Gretel took a last sip of hot cocoa, put the empty cup back on the bedside table, and said loudly, "Come in. Master Nordmark, I'm sorry to trouble you." The person who knocked on the door was a direct subordinate of Archmage Jannings, who was designated to manage the general affairs of the Institute. At this time, he came over with a volume of documents. "It's like this, we have encountered a little trouble. The Eagle country requires speeding up the production of vaccines, but the production speed of chicken embryos has reached the limit. Archmage Jannings sent me to ask if there is anything better. Methods. Well." Greet took the document, glanced at every line, and quickly read down. "I don't know whose handwriting this document came from. It is written clearly and neatly. The number of hens, the number of roosters, the number of eggs produced per day, and the number of chicken embryos are closely related. We have also tried to increase the number of hens, but it cannot be done in a short time." The necromancer who came to deliver the documents was a little annoyed. The manpower and material resources that can be mobilized in the villages around the Eagle country have been stretched to the limit. If we continue to squeeze them, we are a little bit unable to do anything. If we raise chickens by ourselves, if we raise them a little densely, they will start to die in large numbers. Well. Gretel held his chin. If you want to keep hens in cages more densely, you must keep up with the cleanliness of the cages and feed. In addition, you must keep up with various vaccinations for the chickens, mix antibiotics into the feed, and use various methods to keep up. Greet remembered that her mother said in her previous life, I used to crush oxytetracycline tablets, soak them in water, open the chick's mouth and pour it down with a small spoon. But now, a vaccine? Human vaccines haven't been studied yet. How about studying chicken diseases and vaccines? Antibiotic. He only has penicillin and streptomycin in his hands, both of which are expensive. They are expensive to eat for human beings, but for chickens. What's more, he was not sure whether the chicken would be good after eating it. Why is vaccine production suddenly increasing? Gretel was thinking and flipping through the files. The visitor looked at him quickly, and seeing that Gretel seemed to be asking casually, he quickly answered. At present, we only know that the first batch of vaccines are very effective. The Eagle country wants to speed up the process in order to expand its rule over the lowlanders. Those who mine, catch warcraft, and do business must be able to travel freely to the jungle. Let the country's wealth increase. Greet nodded, feeling that it made sense, but also felt that something was wrong. However, I had just experienced my body being hollowed out, my mind was buzzing, and I really didn't have the energy to think about it. Put it down and let me think about it. He rubbed his temples with his thumb. The number of chicken embryos has reached its limit. If we want to increase the production, we must either work hard on virus purification, or we can take the path of cell culture. Sister Uge, how are you doing in cell culture? Already? I'll go take a look again. Ashmoon Song rushed out. Talking about Gretel, lecturing Gretel, and so on, I no longer care about it. Although she was temporarily freed from the nagging of the elf sister, Gretel had no intention of lying down. In the final analysis, he is the person in charge of the institute, and he is the first person responsible whether the results cannot be produced or the output cannot keep up. How to nourish cells. How to make cells multiply quickly and provide the virus with a basis for proliferation. How can these cells be fed safely and in greater numbers? Greet closed his eyes for a while, feeling that his energy had recovered a little, and he stood up and walked towards the cell group. Wearing isolation gowns, entering the semi-contaminated area, and entering the clean area, from a distance, I heard Ashuedge directing. Add more serum. Add more. Too much pancreatic supernatant was added. Only half a drop can be added. Half a drop, do you know what half a drop is? Add a little more glucose solution. Greet walked over in small steps. Ashuedge stood in the center of the cell group laboratory with her eyes half closed, giving instructions to groups one by one. The 5 necromancers were trotted away by her command. They could only stand for a moment like this when they stopped to add liquid. Hurry up! Hurry up! There are still 30 sets of experiments to be done today. If you go slow, you won't be able to finish them. After shouting again, I saw Greet come in, wearing a thick rubber isolation gown, a mask, protective goggles, and a visor, and his face was already covered with sweat from the heat. Ashuedge quickly threw him a cold and heat-resistant, and then said angrily. Why are you here? Your magic power has been drained. Please rest more. I'll just take a look and don't do anything. Gretel smiled flatteringly at her. Let me take a look at the progress of the cell culture. What is this part? This is a broken liver. The necromancer who was pulling the floating saucer quickly stopped and stood at attention. Your Excellency, Lord of the Plague, we used healthy livers to cultivate them before. This liver is broken and needs to be thrown away. Etc. Greet waved his hand and leaned over to look at the liver. On the floating dish, the liver lobes in the pool of blood were a little black, a little tough and hard, and there were some white fish-like tissues in them. In some places, they are even wrapped in balls and lumps. Even though he had been an emergency surgeon, not a hepatobiliary surgeon, Greet still felt familiar with this form. He raised his face slightly and recalled. Well, don't move this piece of liver yet. You can make a pathological section for me to see. Can you do sectioning? Can you do staining? Yes, Your Excellency. I will do it now, Your Excellency. Because Greet was in a hurry, the necromancer directly sliced the liver tissue and applied for a small tube of precious liquid nitrogen. Put the frozen tissue into a small box and slowly place it flatly into a cup filled with liquid nitrogen. Keep it there for 15 seconds, and the liver tissue will quickly freeze into ice cubes. Then, with all his concentration, the necromancer raised a wind blade and aimed at the frozen liver tissue to cut straight down. 1 knife, 2 knives, 3 knives. Okay. Your Excellency. Actually, this is not how frozen sectioning is done during the operation. There are many steps. However, it is not required to save the sample, just take a look at it, which is fine. Gretel muttered to himself, leaning under the microscope to look at the pathological tissue that the necromancer had cut out for him. While looking, he nodded. Well, this is what I want, I said. You can try other methods. For example, culture this broken liver with corruption cyst, and then add pathogenic factors, maybe there will be surprise. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1046. Corruption Cyst. Ashuej's long pointed ears twitched, her nose wrinkled, and she quietly took a few steps away. Forget it about working with a necromancer. Anyway, Grey's specific rules are strict. Everyone must be strictly cleaned when coming in and out, and the smell of the body is covered by disinfectant. If you can't smell it, just pretend it's not there. She can still bear it. However, using necromancy is a bit too much. The conflict between that cold, dark, corrupt smell and the natural breath is the most serious. Yes, death is part of the cycle of life and part of nature, but necromancy is not. Forcibly reversing life and death, forcing a life that should sink into death to remain in the world, is what the elves hate the most. Sneeze. Sister Uge, Greet turned back. Are you feeling uncomfortable? Did you catch a cold? Or were you too tired to take care of me just now? If you are tired, go and take a rest. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have troubled you so much. I'm fine. Ashuej pressed the tip of her nose and forced to hold back her second sneeze. She couldn't leave, she had to watch Gretel and make sure he didn't make any mistakes. When facing difficulties, when encountering problems that cannot be solved by one's own ability, especially when there seems to be a righteous purpose, this is the time when people are most likely to fall. You try? I'm here to watch. Greet nodded and stopped trying to persuade him to leave. On the other side, the necromancer who had found the piece of bad liver had already taken a piece of liver tissue, minced it finely and put it into the culture medium. Close your eyes, open your eyes, aim at the flask, and cast the spell. A faint black light passed by. The necromancer grabbed a magnifying glass, stared at the culture solution for a moment, and was overjoyed. It's useful. It's useful. Your Excellency, the cells in this damaged liver grow much faster than the good cells. and it responds particularly well to corruption cysts. Then try a few more times. Cut the liver tissue a little more finely, especially if it looks like different types of tissue and different types of cells. Cut them separately and culture them separately. With a confident face, Greet gave detailed instructions. Those that can be fed will be divided into bottles and continued to be cultivated to see which one is most sensitive to corruption cyst. By the way, when cutting, pay attention to compare with normal tissue and pick out those abnormal cells. Okay, Your Excellency. Be sure to choose carefully, Your Excellency. Greet was a little happy with this result, but also took it for granted. Well, that piece of liver looked like cancerous tissue at first glance. After being frozen during the operation, we could see it more clearly. The growth ability of cancer cells is always stronger than that of normal cells, and their adaptability is also stronger. What's more, Greet always feels that the cancer cells that cause people to die from cancer may be more adaptable to necromancy. The famous Hela cells, also known as the legendary immortal cells, do not age and die and can divide indefinitely. They are a type of cancer cell. Thank you for your hard work. If this kind of cells can be maintained, it might be much easier to use them to amplify disease-causing factors. You must work hard. Your Excellency. Don't worry, Your Excellency. We will find more cells like this, Your Excellency. The necromancer stood up straight, said a word, nodded once, said another word, and nodded again. Intense red burned from his neck to his cheeks and then to the edges of his ears. Being so excited, Gretel was really worried that his blood pressure would soar directly above his head, and then he would pass away with a belch. In order to prevent such a tragic situation from happening, and to prevent the big working animal that he had just acquired, whether because he was lucky or because of his strength, he seized this opportunity. From rushing to the street, Gretel decided to cool him down a little. He put his hands behind his back and nodded lightly. Then just do it, don't be anxious, do it slowly. It's not that easy to feed cells. There is still a long way to go until they can amplify enough disease-causing factors. Yes, Your Excellency. We will work hard, Your Excellency. Gretel was shocked by his Your Excellency and had a headache. He waved his hands and drifted away. Well, cancer cells may be easier to maintain than ordinary cells. I hope they can work hard to survive with the support of magic. Of course, we would be lucky if we could find Hela cells. What about the polio vaccine? What about HPV infection research? What about cloning technology research? What about telomerase? All are researched based on Hela cells. Most importantly, the discovery of telomerase also points to a very special direction that can excite everyone. Eternal life. Let them find this kind of thing slowly. Anyway, to discover telomerase, you must first discover the chromosome. After discovering the chromosome, you need to analyze it. To analyze it, you must first prove the double helix structure, and then discover that telomeres are shortened. Come on. Gretel staggered back to his residence. After eating a good meal and sleeping well, I feel that my mental, physical, and magical powers have all been restored. I am gearing up and feel that I am good again. Come study. Come study. I have done half of the research before, but I still need to continue. Don't give up. Greet dressed up, entered the laboratory, and took a deep breath. In front of him, there were boxes, and boxes. Countless boxes moved from the ground to the table, then from the ground to the table, and then from the ground to the table. Each box is engraved with the characteristic runes of the necromancy system, specifically used to preserve blood. Open the box cover, there are 24 pieces per plate, 24 pieces per plate, 24 pieces per plate. Human blood. From Red Willow Village. Duck feather, 23 years old, male, before vaccination. Yufei, 23 years old, male, after vaccination. Duck feather, 23 years old, male, 1 day after vaccination. Duck egg, 17 years old, female, before vaccination. Duck egg, 17 years old, female, after vaccination. Duck egg, 17 years old, female, 1 day after vaccination. Hong Liao Xiao, 32 years old, male. Chicken embryo 7058, before vaccination. Chicken embryo 7058, after vaccination. Gretel hooked her fingers slightly. The hands of several mages have already flown up. He can pull out the test tubes, plug the test tubes, pull out the test tubes, plug the test tubes. Between pulling out and plugging, his mental power is constantly working, drawing a drop of blood from the test tube, identifying bloodline, and storing information, the next test tube, identifying bloodline, and storing information. Thanks to the meditation core and the support of the world's will, he shaped the meditation core into a biological computer. So far, he has not seen the upper limit of the storage capacity of this thing. It is equivalent to carrying a tower spirit with you. The kind that automatically stores and calculates automatically. Hey. No more pitifully buying chips, no more carrying huge debts, buying tower spirits and mage towers, and calculating every day how to make money to pay off debts. Greed was casting, analyzing, and storing spells while letting his meditation core work hard to calculate and think. Theoretically, the information obtained from the same person, or in other words, the same biological source of blood should be exactly the same 3 times identifying bloodline. Even if the content of any substance is different, at least the substance itself will not suddenly appear more or less. Then, if there is one more substance in the information before and after vaccination, and one more substance is in the information after vaccination and 1 day after vaccination, then there is a high probability that the extra stuff before and after vaccination is the virus floating in the blood, and the extra stuff in the blood 1 day after vaccination may be antibodies. 2 blood samples from 1 are not sure, and 8 out of 10 blood samples are not sure. What about 100 blood samples? What about 1,000 copies? Mouse blood samples, chicken embryo blood samples, rabbit blood samples, monkey blood samples. Add them all, use Identify Bloodline to read, and see what you can read. All the blood samples were compared before and after vaccination, and the extra things. Perhaps, I have found the way to identify the yellow fever virus. Greet, come on. Pull out test tubes, take blood samples, cast spells, analyze, throw blood samples into waste buckets, and plug test tubes. Pull out a test tube, take a blood sample, cast a spell, analyze it, throw the blood sample into a waste bucket, and plug the test tube. Greet repeated mechanically. 1 round of analysis, 6 actions, 1 board with 24 test tubes, and 144 actions. 1 box has 144 actions, 10 boxes means 1,440 actions. Greet raised his hand, then dropped it, raised his hand, then dropped his hand, doing so in a daze, his eyes staring straight. In a daze, he went back to a few years ago when he was trying to analyze the blood samples and try to figure out the blood test magic. Oh, it's not the same. At that time, I had a blood sample in one hand and a gold treasure box in another. I had to constantly replace the chips in the gold treasure box, and I was also worried about where the money to buy the chips would come from. For this reason, I came up with various small inventions. It got better later and there was no need to buy a chip. It was also a blood sample in one hand and a gold treasure box in the other. The gold treasure box was connected to the Tower Spirit Center. For this reason, he also occupied the central level of the Mage Tower for several months. Fortunately, he is the master of the Mage Tower. I feel more and more similar to those migrant workers who studied basic medicine or biology in my previous life. The difference is that the scientific research migrant workers are only responsible for operations, and the calculations are still done by computers or supercomputers. I also do computer work. 1 box, 2 boxes. 4 boxes, 8 boxes. Greet finished the day's work mechanically, and walked out of the laboratory with soft steps. As he walked, he was still chanting. This one is no different, this one is no different, this one is no different, tisk. The probability of problems with human blood samples is really high. Could it be that these people have been bitten before and have acquired immunity? It is said that yellow fever is more lethal among white people than in Africa, mainly because black people are more likely to be bitten and have developed a certain degree of herd immunity. The same reason is true for the high lethality of smallpox among the indigenous people. We need to compare the blood samples of animals again. It's so annoying. When will the results be available? I'm so tired from calculating this, my head feels so hot. Celera, pour me some ice water, and give me a bottle of glucose. Thump. Greet. Hold on. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. Thanks to Edhamelairdalabi for the 100 starting coins. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1047. Gretel fell to the ground, sweating all over his face. Sarala rushed over, raised her hand, and was about to pour ice water on Gretel's head as Gretel said, but Ashu-Isan grabbed her. Hey, wait. He is ignorant, you can't listen to him. You will get sick if you pour ice water at this time. Give him some warm air. And drink some hot food. As he spoke, he took out a red and purple fruit from his pocket and stuffed it into Greet's mouth without any explanation. Gretel didn't even react, he felt the fruit smash against his teeth, and the juice flowed into his mouth. Woo! In an instant, Greet's entire face was distorted. It's obviously a purple-red fruit, not cyan, so why is it so sour? Fortunately, the glucose solution was quickly handed over. Gretel drank a whole bottle of glucose water before he recovered. He closed his eyes and sat there breathing lightly. Therefore, the calculation of the meditation core is fully powered, which also consumes energy. Not only does it consume magic power, it also consumes physical energy. If you don't want your blood sugar to plummet, you should pay attention to meditation to keep your magic power supply at a high level. After this lesson, Gretel finally understood that his meditation core may be used as a mage tower, but his physical body cannot be used as a mage tower. He adjusted his rhythm, slowed down, and continued to study. Human blood samples, human blood samples, human blood samples. Mouse blood sample, mouse blood sample, mouse blood sample. Monkey blood sample, monkey blood sample, monkey blood sample. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days. Distinguish bloodline. This spell seems to be of very low level, but it has extremely rich connotations. It can identify the blood type of the owner of the blood, to be precise, it can identify the specificity of the antigen on the surface of red blood cells and appear as an image in the meditative field of vision. It can identify the blood potassium, sodium, calcium, and other concentrations of the blood owner, to be precise, it can identify the ion concentration and display it as an image. It can identify the race of the blood owner. Greet suspects that it should be able to identify the DNA or DNA fragments in the blood, and match and output it with the DNA list in the spell library. It can now also identify viruses and antibodies in the blood. Greet very much doubted that this spell used some kind of light wave, or many kinds of light waves that were invisible to the naked eye, to scan the blood. Then, various protein macromolecules, DNA, or ions in the blood are excited to form rich images. Of course, because the information stimulated by the spell is so rich, the previous analysis of the information was quite insufficient. After a lot of research and comparison, one day, Gretel closed his eyes and a bright light appeared in his hand. This is it. It's this point, it's this spell fragment. It was this image that he was looking for, the magical image of the yellow fever virus. Prepare the serum for me, Gretel stood up suddenly. Serum, chicken embryos, vaccine. Prepare 10 copies of each. Let me test whether I can use magic to identify this pathogenic factor. With a crash, necromancers rushed out of each research room. Those who have to prepare serum/chicken blood/vaccines for Gretel will of course run very fast, and those who have nothing to do with their work will not run too slowly either. Mage Nordmark, has your research yielded results? Your Excellency, Lord of the Plague, can this disease-causing factor be identified using magic? Do you need us to help? We can organize the information. You can also help write the paper. No need to add your name. Ahem. Archmage Heinz walked out leisurely. With a glance, the surrounding necromancers dispersed. Archmage Heinz watched them disappear with satisfaction, turned to Gretel, and raised a stiff smile. Mage Nordmark, is there any progress in research? How far is it from mass production of vaccines? The Eagle Country hopes to complete it within 10 days. It should be soon. Gretel looked directly into his eyes and nodded confidently. Let me finish the verification experiment. If there are no problems, I should be able to move on to the next stage. He picked up portions of mouse serum, monkey serum, vaccines to be sent away, and blood taken from chicken embryos, and photographed the spells one by one. In the meditation field of vision, brilliance shines one after another. The meditation core is operating at full capacity, receiving information, comparing information, and outputting information. The result is the same. The result is the same. The result is the same. The result, the similarity is above 99.9%, which can basically be regarded as the same. Another batch of blood samples. Now make a blood sample of the attenuated strain of the vaccine, the original strain isolated before, and the virulent strains of each generation. Get some. Mix some of them, and don't mix some of them. You are responsible for sending them up, and don't record them on the test tube. What blood samples were mixed with it? This time, there were more people running around. Lin An simply stood up and organized. Don't crowd them all in this room. The person who delivers the blood samples should go to room 3. The person who is responsible for mixing the blood samples should go to room 4. You are responsible for recording which test tubes are mixed with which blood samples. You, sit next to him, responsible for checking the records. Archmage Haynes quietly retreated. Returned to his study, spread out his pen and paper, and continue writing. Dear teacher, Master Nordmark has made unexpected achievements in the art of transformation. He successfully turned into a silver dragon. Although due to insufficient magic power, he finally appeared as a young silver dragon, but it also means that he has completely mastered it. The way to become a dragon. Attached is the image transformed into a dragon, the image collected by the arcane eye, and the three-dimensional image synthesized by the tower spirit. As I write this, I can't help but laugh out loud. When the teacher sees these images, he wonders how he will feel. Well, maybe he will make a small model himself and put it on the table to enjoy. Or maybe it will lure the Lord of Thunder to come and see it. After all, there are no high-level mages from Thunderhorn here, so they can't send the images back immediately. Given that Master Nordmark is accompanied by a silver dragon lady, giving him the dragon bone directly may not be a very suitable way to show his kindness. However, perhaps a copy of some of the information collected in Black Crow Swamp can be given to him so that he can better understand it to close the distance. Currently, he is trying to use magic to identify the pathogenic factors. This newly discovered pathogenic factor is extremely small and can pass through small holes that bacteria cannot pass through. It cannot be seen with the highest magnification microscope. Jeannings and I have been working in this area. Unfortunately, we have not found a suitable way. However, Master Nordmark seems to have achieved certain results. Is it possible to give him some powerful plagues collected in Black Crow Swamp, especially some plague seeds targeting powerful extraordinary creatures, for him to study? I think he is very interested in this kind of plague. While Archmage Heinz was writing letters to His Excellency the Immortal, gossiping, complaining, and asking for resources, Gretel had already used magic to target the yellow fever virus, specifically, the virus used to make vaccines. Specific attenuated strains. Moreover, Greed has determined that strains of different strengths can be distinguished in the same way. There are several different strains in a test tube, or there is a single strain, and it can be identified. At this point, production is easy. Greed casually asks someone to catch a mouse, inject the poisonous serum into it, and start to induce birth. Long. Give me rapid proliferation. I'll provide you with magic energy. Grow it faster. It grows into every cell and takes up the entire mouse. Come on, speed up. The black light in his hand swept across the area. Soon, the mouse began to become lethargic and its body temperature increased. Gretel breathed a sigh of relief, nodded, and began to command the necromancers. Draw blood. Execute, take out the brain, liver, and kidneys, centrifuge them separately, and extract the supernatant. The rest of the tissue, crush, centrifuge, extract. Take a random sample and let me test it using magic to see if it's still the same strain. Take it and test whether the toxicity has increased. A group of necromancers drove him crazy. There was a loud sound of footsteps, accompanied by constant shouting. Quick! Quick! Get 10 more mice. Give me the crusher. You have so much brains to use the crusher. Can't you use the wind blade? Or have you forgotten all about the mage's hand? Trim. Trim. How dare you drive the centrifuge without trimming it? Aren't you afraid it will fly out and smash your head? Gretel stood there, smiling and shaking his head. In this situation, he returned to his previous life in a trance, where a group of necromancers were controlled by him like researchers in a laboratory. Well, except for the fact that there are many golden skeletons busy with us, it's a little bit of a drama. The mouse blood sample test showed that except for the specific attenuated virus strain, no other virus strains were detected. The supernatants were taken from the mouse brain, liver, and kidneys, and no other virus strains were detected. The remaining tissue extracts were isolated and no other strains were detected. In mouse passage experiments, no increase in toxicity was observed. Repeat the experiment again. Use mice, rabbits, chickens, and dogs to conduct experiments respectively. Each group of animals will have 20 animals each. The experimental results are gratifying. When a weak virus strain is identified using magic, the mental power is locked and a large number of viruses are spawned. The amount of virus can be increased to the highest level in an instant regardless of the virus multiplication time. And because the mental power has been locked on a specific weak strain, if there is a spell to induce it, it can ensure that a large number of the same weak strain will be obtained. The spell test is convenient and fast, and you can even check whether there are any other highly virulent strains mixed in besides the vaccine-specific attenuated strain. The results of random inspections in the passage experiments showed that no mutation was induced after 80 spells were spawned, and no stronger or weaker strains emerged. Although the raw materials required are still the same, the time to produce the vaccine has been greatly shortened. Mage Nordmark. Archmage Heinz watched the entire research process. Although the core locking technology is still unclear, he has determined one thing. Can vaccine production be increased? Can it be increased significantly? Of course, Gretel beamed. It's basically done. Wait. Let me do the last experiment. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1048. Chapter 1045. Thanks to the snake god for his kindness, the vaccine should be provided quickly. One last experiment? Archmage Heinz looked at Gretel suspiciously. It's not fun to say this. In the laboratory, those who say this will probably not get any good results. The luckiest ones will finish the last experiment and find that the conclusion is not right. Not only is it wrong, but if you work backwards, you can also overturn all the conclusions in the previous steps. For those who are slightly less lucky, during the last experiment, the experimental equipment explodes, or the experimental subject explodes, and the previous experimental process cannot be reproduced. Even worse luck was that during the last experiment, the experimenter himself exploded. Oh, compared to the explosion of the experimental equipment, sometimes I don't know which one is more tragic. However, at this time, the words he said to stop Gretel were more unlucky than the others. Archmage Heinz could only watch Greet walk to the next door with great enthusiasm, and issued a series of orders. Catch me some big animals. 2 rabbits, 2 dogs, 2 adult chickens, 2, oh, there are no pigs, are there any bigger animals? Are there any marmots? Drag when you come over, give them a bath first, rinse them with disinfectant, and be careful of scratches and bites. Get the vaccine ready, get the grinders and centrifuges ready, sterile saline solution ready. Prepare test tubes, prepare liquid nitrogen. Following his order, the research institute was buzzing, and a large number of people were already rushing out. The footsteps of the necromancer and the footsteps of the skeleton were intertwined, mixing into an extremely strange symphony. Soon, the squeaking of rabbits, the barking of dogs, the chirping of groundhogs were added. Archmage Heinz shook his head, put his hands behind his back, and walked out slowly. Behind him, Gretel directed the skeletons to pick up syringes, inject the vaccine into the animals one by one, lock the virus, and activate the spell. Proliferate. 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 Proliferate to the maximum. Take blood from each limb and trunk and send it to me for testing. Centrifuge and purify, give me the supernatant. Prepare clean test tubes and liquid nitrogen, wait for me to purify dash. The magic circle constructed by the magic light lit up in the disinfection cabinet in front of Greet. The purification circle created by Master Norwood, specifically used to purify substances, is outlined by the void of magical power. In the center of the magic circle, in the center of a clean test tube, the invisible but real power pointed at the supernatant fluid squeezed out of the rabbit's body. Greet concentrated slightly, and used the mentally locked virus as a template to connect the magic circle to the bottle of supernatant. Purification begins. In the disinfection cabinet, the supernatant liquid began to stir and tumble. Extremely tiny, yet real substances fell into the test tube. By the time the spell ended, a vague layer of powder had accumulated at the bottom of the test tube. Well, it seems a little short. Lynn, who came over to help, stood on tiptoes, glanced over Gretel's shoulder, and murmured. Greet shrugged. Less? No, it's just because the pathogenic factor is too small. If you dilute it to a concentration sufficient to make a vaccine, you can dilute it much, much more. This kind of thing cannot be seen with an optical microscope and can only be seen with a microscope and electron microscope. Taking the new coronavirus as an example, the average load reaches 10 to the power of 8 virus copies per milliliter of blood, that is to say, there are 10 virus copies per milliliter of blood. 8 viruses. In this milliliter of blood, there is still 83% water, as well as a large number of blood cells, albumin, globulin, coagulation factors, etc. The little bit left over contains 10 to the power of 8 viruses. You can imagine how big the virus is. In the test tube, the bottom of such a test tube looks small, but the virus has already multiplied to its limit in all the blood, tissues, and cells of the entire rabbit. The supernatant is then covered with a magic circle to extract as much as possible. You know, use a centrifuge to centrifuge, filter, centrifuge again, and filter again. This centrifugation method will waste at least half of the virus. With magic circle purification, there is much less waste and much more practical vaccines are obtained. He picked up the test tube, inserted the liquid nitrogen casually, turned around and handed the box to Lin. Fully dilute this virus and test it. Safety, protective efficacy, dosage, everything must be tested. Well. He quickly estimated the dilution factor. Approximately according to the weight ratio of chicken embryos and rabbits, the concentration of pathogenic factors in rabbits is doubled. Based on this, it is 10 times concentrated and 10 times dilute. Test within this range. Okay. Lin ran away. Greet asked people to kill 2 rabbits, 2 dogs, and 2 marmots. The final conclusion is that, as a large rodent, prairie dogs are particularly compatible with yellow fever virus. A prairie dog washed with disinfectant water, treated with plague and other diseases using disease removal, and then killed Yersinia pestis and other germs, the virus extracted was more than 20 times that of a chicken embryo of the same weight. Of course, considering the availability of materials, in fact, using adult chickens to inject vaccines, maximizing birth, and then maximizing purification will have the lowest production cost and the highest efficiency. Gretel activated the magic circle by himself, and had several people help him crush, centrifuge, grind, and preserve it. The vaccine freeze-dried powder produced in one day was enough for the entire institute to produce, which had been busy day and night for dozens of days. The weight of an adult chicken is at least 60 or 70 times that of a newly hatched chick, let alone a half-hatched chicken embryo still in the egg. The first group of vaccines passed the safety inspection. The second group passed the random inspection. The first group passed the random inspection of protective effectiveness. The second group passed the random inspection of protective effectiveness. The top moves his mouth, the bottom runs and breaks his legs. The necromancers worked day and night, taking Gretel's virus extract and conducting safety experiments, effectiveness experiments, and dilution factor experiments. After 3 or 5 days, the feedback was summarized group by group. All in all, the quality of this batch of vaccines is no problem, just like the previous ones. The dilution factor has also been tested. The amount of vaccine produced so far is enough for the estimated population in the surrounding lowlands. Greet clapped her hands happily. He breathed a long sigh of relief and smiled at Archmage Heinz. Look, the vaccine is done. Just say that you need to use magic to take a detour. Let's just say we need to improve production efficiency. Knowledge is power, and knowledge is production efficiency. In this era, the magician himself is the strongest producer. To be on the safe side, I will produce another batch and send people back to Nevis. With the liquid nitrogen here, these vaccines can last for a long time, enough to last until Nevis. Let everyone setting out there be vaccinated before boarding the ship. It is best for those settlements on the east coast of the New World to be vaccinated generally. In this way, adventurers from the Kingdom of Kent will no longer be afraid of yellow fever when they go to the New World or the Black Continent. Archmage Heinz. Your efficiency is too high, now I have to think carefully about how to negotiate with the Eagle Country, how to sell the vaccine at the best price, and most importantly, how to make the other party feel that this thing it's not something that can be made casually. Make them willingly pay for it. The research and development expenses of the Future Research Institute, and even the initial operating expenses of Tenok City's Mage Tower and the entire Eagle Kingdom's Mage Network, all depend on this amount of money. Before he could figure it out, Chiwakoto sent a female snake to the door to urge him. Not only the snake god, but also the eagle god also praised the vaccine and its effectiveness. "Honey, look what I've got for you." Trotto Annie walked into the palace with a cheerful face. Behind him, two servants held a large wooden tray 3 feet in diameter and presented a piece of fur to his beloved concubine. The shiny black fur with patterns was filled with the power of moonlight. Obviously, only high-level monsters could peel off such fur. "Use this fur to make you a coat, okay?" "That's great." The beautiful woman's eyes were bright. She stretched out her sharp nails painted with bright red and stroked the rich fur. "There are so many good things lately." "Yes, there have been a lot more people going to the lowlands recently, and a lot more treasures have been brought back." When Trotto Annie said this, he also sighed, lowered his head, and prayed softly. "Thank you to the snake god for your kindness." "Thank you to the snake god for your kindness." Changji's eyes flashed and she prayed in unison. White Eagle warrior Satyr quickly walked into the shop, dropped a roll of something with a bang, and unfolded it, revealing a large piece of dark, hard scale skin with bulges on it. "Old Zappa, help me make this thing into a breastplate," he pointed arrogantly at the roll of scale skin. "I'll give you 10 days. Next time we go to the lowlands, I want this thing on me." "Okay, okay." The old cobbler held up the piece of crocodile skin with shaking hands and stroked it carefully. "Sir, my knife cannot cut this thing, it will break the blade." With a clang, a fine steel blade fell in front of him. Satyr raised his head slightly, with a proud expression on his face. "This is the dagger seized from the white ghost. It's enough for you. By the way, take this and give it to the child." Another small bag fluttered down. Old Zappa looked surprised. "Thank you, sir. You are so generous, sir. If you have any harvest next time, please be sure to ask me to do it." "That will definitely happen. In the future, it will be more and more convenient for us to go to the lowlands. Thanks to the eagle god and the snake god for their kindness." "Thank you to the eagle god and the snake god for your kindness." The old cobbler lowered his head and prayed. He lowered his head to see off the white eagle warrior, immediately untied the leather bag and took a look. The yellowish-brown crystal hard lumps, large and small, were filled with small skin bags. "Dip a little powder into your mouth and you can taste the sweetness." Old Parker closed the workshop door and ran back to the house behind. He found his grandson, took out the smallest lump and stuffed it into his mouth. "Come on, have a taste. It's so sweet." "Grandpa, it's so sweet." "Yes, it's so sweet. In the future, we will still have the opportunity to eat this thing. This is all the favor given to us by the eagle god and the snake god." In a farm outside the city, a slave girl named Tumau stirred the corn paste in the pot and smiled happily. Since the village organized a team to go to the lowlands, their lives have become easier, and the food they have to hand in has become less. "I can finish half full with this meal today. Thank you to the snake god for your kindness." She prayed softly. More abundant supplies flowed from the lowlands below to the plateau, making the lives of the people on the plateau a little easier. Even a little bit stirs up people's gratitude to the hawk god and snake god. Time and time again, their gods' names were chanted with gratitude by nobles, priests, craftsmen, and slaves. Although people didn't notice it, the snake god and the hawk god actually felt the power rising. Moreover, with the widespread vaccination, white eagle warriors, black eagle warriors, and mid-level and low-level priestesses can freely go to the lowlands to harvest faith for them without consuming divine power for protection. If these vaccines were more widely available, if there were more people who could worship them, revere them, provide them with strength. What are those magicians talking about vaccines? In the darkness, the snake god's hissing voice reached Chiwakoto's heart, with an urgency and urging rarely seen in the elderly female snake. When can it be used? Go and urge them to make it quickly. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1049. The flow of people and materials naturally brings wealth. The growth of wealth has improved people's living standards. The people of the Eagle Country attribute these to the blessings of God, and praise the Eagle God and the Snake God more devoutly. The devout praises of the people increase the power of the Hawk God and Snake God, making them even more eager for a large supply of vaccines. If the vaccine can be widely spread in the lowlands, more people can go to the jungle to collect and hunt, bringing them more wealth. If the vaccine can be spread widely in the lowlands, the people can be cleared of jungle, and more corn and pumpkins can be planted for them, as well as more delicious sweet grass. To say the least, being able to popularize vaccines in the lowlands is also a symbol of the dominance of the Eagle God and the Snake God. Bless the people and protect them from the plague, and more people will believe in them and bring them stronger power. The power of the Eagle God and the Snake God has become stronger on the edge of Tenok City. In the towering Mage Tower, the Archmage in charge of the Mage Tower looked at the readings given by the Tower Spirit and remained silent for a long time. Although it is very slow, it is definitely getting stronger. It is speculated that it is related to absorbing a large amount of faith power. It is speculated that it is related to the recent widespread popularization of vaccines. Do we need to reduce the supply of vaccines to slow down their growth rate? A young mage asked impatiently at the round table. Several magicians exchanged looks. Finally, Archmage Hines shook his head slowly. No need. Before the airship left, Baebo and I communicated with them once. Whether it is the Snake God or the Eagle God, an 18th level Archmage is enough to compete. It is not that easy to advance to level 19. The level 18 Necromancer smiled sadly. A skeleton floated faintly on the black robe, and then he opened his mouth, and his upper jaw and lower jaw collided. And even if they advance to level 19, the council will have enough power to suppress them. They will stay sane. If they can't, the council will help them stay sane. There was a sound of exhalation in the conference room. The magicians relaxed back in their chairs and smiled at each other. The host of the Mage Tower applauded gently. Then, the production and supply of the vaccine will be left to you. By the way, here is a list of our needs. Then, the news came from the Parliament, hoping to occupy a number of plantations in the Eagle Country and mining areas. Archmage Hines. Are they really using us as coolies? We are responsible for production, but we are also responsible for negotiation? Are you just going to place orders? No. We are responsible for production, and you are responsible for negotiating. Leave it all to us. How do we know what you need urgently, what you don't need urgently, what you must get, and what you can give into? But when it comes to vaccines, you guys are in direct contact with each other. We are just a research institute, and you are the personnel who represent the Parliament. The two archmages quarreled, glared, and slapped the table. After struggling for a while, Mage Tower reluctantly agreed to join the negotiation. Archmage Hines breathed a sigh of relief and immediately threw out two lists. This is the demand list of the Institute, used to supply the daily needs of researchers, advanced needs, and the research needs of the Institute. A long list, rich in content and all-inclusive. Gold coins and silver coins used for salary payment, can be converted using contribution points, or can be converted using local coarse gold and coarse silver. To the daily diet of mutton, beef, fish, shrimps, and crabs, which need to be transported by special personnel and kept fresh, fruits, vegetables and drinks. Then to the supply of various magic crystals for meditation and adjusting elements, to the various glassware and instrument spare parts in the Research Institute. It is best to have a small glass workshop for daily use. Then to various mice, chickens, rabbits, dogs, monkeys, and their feed. Why do you still need sparkling water? We supply 30 liters a day and ask for it to be iced. I say you are all in the new world, so your requirements should be lower. Please, how can we live in such a hot place without iced sparkling water? The work in the institute is so stressful, why don't we let people drink some sparkling water? No. I don't have any here either. At most, I'll give you baking soda and sugar, and you can mix it yourself. There's no refined white sugar, only local coarse sugar. If you want the best, refine it yourself. Fish and shrimp are provided once a week. If you want more fresh products, you can buy them yourself. Their white eagle warriors flew with all their might and couldn't even fly here in a day. Hey! I want you to talk, I want you to talk to the eagle country, don't talk to us. After a lot of nitpicking, complaining, and struggling, this list was finally divided into those that absolutely must be discussed, those that are best discussed, and those that don't matter if they are not discussed, and were put aside. The mages in the mage tower just breathed a sigh of relief when they saw Archmage Hines touch his left wrist with his right hand, and took out another list from his space equipment that looked like a knitted bracelet. What is this? Oh, this is the need of our Plague Lord and Miss Sarah. Okay, put this list at the top, and we'll try our best to do it for him. Archmage Hines breathed in, breathed in again, breathed out again. There were ghostly shadows on the black robe, and if it weren't for the fact that the skeleton had no eyes, I would have almost rolled my eyes. Why is it that his needs are to do the best we can while our institute's needs are more than half picky? Because all they ask for are cultivation resources, unlike you, all they ask for is food and drink. The needs of the Mage Tower turned into orders when they arrived in the Eagle Kingdom. The indigenous slaves worked hard to cultivate and raise the food to provide the magicians with corn, pumpkins, various vegetables, and common meat. The warriors went deep into the jungle to hunt all kinds of monsters. The White Eagle warriors specially arranged a route to fly from the port to Tenok City, delivering the catch from the seaside to the mages and the nobles of Tenok City. And this kind of exchange also attracted the attention of Storm Islands. Pirates, or people who usually do business and become pirates when they have the opportunity, bring a steady stream of information to the governor's mansion. The Eagle Nation has been making a lot of moves recently. Yes, the pirates said that there is a lot more communication between the coast and the interior. This is the cat's eye stone they bought from the port, such a cat's eye stone, the size of a little finger, smooth, moist, well proportioned in color, without flaws, and with cat's eye halo, only costs 50 gold coins. 50 gold coins. You can't even buy it here with 100 gold coins. If you send it to Brolin Kingdom, it will be at least twice as much. If you send it to the Glory Holy City, it will be set into rings on the hands of ladies, or pendants of bishops. It can be worth more than 100 gold coins, 1,000 gold coins. They have opened many plantations along the river, planting sugar cane, vanilla, allspice, coffee beans, and various crops. In the long run, the things in our plantations will not be easy to sell. Get a wave. It's not appropriate now. The new Archbishop, Archbishop Belo Coelho in golden robes, who was sent by the Glory Holy City to preside over the situation, slowly shook his head. We have limited manpower and cannot launch a war against the Eagle Kingdom for the time being. It is not our territory in the first place. Even if we cannot occupy it, it is not lost. Besides, that trash in Teramo has lost too many good people. Governor Balman sighed in disappointment. Among the masters who lost was one of his personal guards, a level 14, a great swordsman who was about to reach level 15. It was really heartbreaking. If such a person is lost, how many resources will be needed to cultivate him? However, you can encourage the pirates to harass. Find someone to spread the news. The Eagle Country has rich gold mines and a few maps. Your Excellency is wise. Governor Balmond immediately gave a thumbs up and praised. Those pirates, what impresses them most is gold. As long as there is gold, they are willing to carry the ship over the mountains and through the rainforest. Moreover, those pirates could not cast steel knives, repair ships, make wine, or weave beautiful silks, let alone pray to God, receive treatment and holy water. The things they robbed will eventually be returned to the city of La Habana. The relationship between the rulers of the Storm Islands and the pirates was originally 1 and 2, 2 and 1. No ruler openly condones pirates, but every ruler secretly uses and restrains pirates. Rely on them to gain wealth, rely on them to attack dissidents, rely on them to intimidate disobedient people. By the way, make the map look more like it, and add some blood or something to make it look like it was secretly hidden by the people brought out by the former deputy governor and the former archbishop. With the intentional or unintentional promotion of the governor and the archbishop, pirates gradually infiltrated the territory of the Eagle Kingdom, especially the lowlands under the plateau. Unlike serious businessmen, pirates' ships are light and small. They can stop anywhere and can penetrate any forest. On the long beach, as soon as you park the boat anywhere, you can drop off a group of people and sneak in with a map. Let's go. Let's go. As long as you can touch the mines and get gold, you can make a fortune. It is said that in that mine, a handful of sand was picked up by the stream, and there were gold particles in it. Someone tripped over the gold while walking. There have been a lot more outsiders coming recently on the shore of the port. The magician guarding the mage tower adjusted the invisible servants and manipulated them to sweep hundreds of miles around. The secret eye carried by the invisible servant projected a screen of light, revealing a sneaky figure. If you don't enter the port, don't take the main road, and just dodge and take the side roads, you are definitely not a good person. Inform the surrounding tribes and tighten their vigilance. Or arrest them. No. The previous plan can be launched. The presiding mage looked at the recent patrol records and found with satisfaction that the number of people wandering ashore has reached more than 100 people every day. Inform the surrounding tribes. If you see these people who don't take the main road, lure them into the forest, into the dense forest. After you have lured them away, report to us and we will pay them. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of thanks to it only. Young for the 100 starting coins. Next time, boss, if you want to give a large amount of rewards, please use the web page. Apple will deduct a lot of the rewards for Apple mobile phones, and it will arrive 3 months late. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1050. The necromancers of the plague branch are very adept at releasing yellow fever plague and other things into the dense forest, and they can do it in new ways. In addition to the public versions of disease technique, fog of disease, corruption cyst, etc., almost everyone has their own unique skills. Of course, the necromancers are required not to show up from the beginning to the end, or even leave the research institute. The environment in the dense forest is required to remain as intact as possible, with no strange corpses or other items appearing. Spell fluctuations must be minimized to avoid attracting the attention of the infected. This requirement is a bit high. However, it is not difficult for Archmage Hines and the necromancers who have worked in the research institute for several months and have acquired new skills. The so-called reverse practice of magical skills is bound to succeed, and reverse practice of vaccine production and vaccination methods is equivalent to releasing a plague on a large scale. Archmage Hines walked calmly in the laboratory and entered a separate compartment where blood samples were collected. His eyes quickly glanced. The serum taken from the earliest patient with the most severe symptoms disappeared half from the test tube silently and fell into the test tube on the sleeve of the Archmage. He turned around and went out, his robe rolled up, and the door of the compartment was gently closed. Waving your sleeves will not take away half of the clouds. After walking out of the research institute, after a moment of concentration, the teleportation technique was activated. The next moment, he had crossed hundreds of kilometers and appeared under the plateau in a canyon close to the dense forest. Quick! Push all the monkeys over here. The mages, not the necromancers of the plague branch, all the people in the institute were working hard, and no one was off duty, hurriedly pushed the prepared monkey over. Each monkey has a cage, neatly stacked on the ground, occupying a rectangle of 5 meters by 6 meters. After placing the monkeys, the mages quickly stepped aside, leaving Archmage Heinz and the monkeys he wanted behind. The Archmage held the test tube in his sleeve and pointed forward. Plague technique. Go. A gray cloud rolled forward, covering all the monkeys. After a moment of silence, Archmage Heinz nodded to everyone and teleported back to the research institute. He found his disciple and asked in a low voice. Gretel didn't look for me, did he? I'm not looking for you, he has been locked in the research room for 2 hours and has not come out. Miss Elf isn't looking for me either, is she? Miss Elf never came to you. Besides, Miss Elf is still raising cells. She just made a breakthrough recently. She can't wait to stay in the cell room day and night. What about Miss Sarah? Miss Sarah is not allowed to enter the research institute. Teacher, if you continue to ask questions, I'm afraid you will be discovered. Archmage Heinz breathed out, turned back to his office, picked up a book and pretended to read it. Thank God, I hope I don't get caught from the beginning to the end. Although their behavior is just a side effect, it does not violate the oath, it is only spread among animals and is not thrown into people, so it does not count as using it to harm people. Putting infected animals on your own land, and people who don't run into them will not be infected with the plague, and it does not count as intentionally spreading the plague. The indigenous people have been vaccinated on a large scale, and the adventurers who may enter the dense forest have also been vaccinated. This will not cause a large-scale outbreak of yellow fever in the Eagle Country. However, this series of methods was known to Gretel, and he was really afraid that Gretel would leave the institute in anger, never come back, and never jointly conduct research with the people in Black Crow Swamp. Hey, it's just a matter of getting away from the Black Crow Swamp. It's possible to follow Miss Elf and plunge into the southern continent. Didn't it mean that Gretel was half elf? It's possible that he was really deceived into going to Elf Island out of anger. Hide it, you must hide it. Archmage Heinz sat calmly in his office, reading a book, drinking ice-cold sparkling water, and pretending to have done nothing. Under the plateau, the mages are busy. Pull all the cages away. Each person is responsible for one monkey. Summon the force field ball. Hurry up. Put the monkey in it. There should be no loopholes in all directions. Summon a swarm of insects to follow. Aim the summoned mosquitoes at the opening of the force field ball, and don't miss anyone. Activate them to suck blood. Hurry. Are you all right? Are you all right? Okay, take back all the mosquitoes. Do you remember the release point you are responsible for? Release at a fixed point, don't make a mistake. Feed the monkeys some healing potion, don't let them die, just half dead, as long as they can survive. The poisonous monkeys can also spread the plague if they catch people, so this can't be wasted. 30 monkeys, 30 batches of mosquitoes, 30 release points. After the release, within a week, foreign pirates were introduced into the jungle. Snapped. Paw. Ouch, the mosquitoes here are really vicious. One bite brings blood. The mosquito repellent smoke sold to us by the natives is really ineffective. Yes, those natives are lazy, greedy, and greedy. The mosquito repellent smoke bought for a gold coin burned out in a long time, and it still can't stop the mosquitoes. It's so itchy. By the way, I'm a little cold, and you? Your face is so red, wait a minute, why is your forehead so hot? Tang en. Tang en. Some of the pirates who were lured, abducted, and forced into the jungle successfully escaped, while others never escaped. Among the pirates who escaped, a small number of them withstood the attrition caused by high fever, chills, headaches, and vomiting blood, and successfully returned to various cities in the Storm Islands. However, they who successfully returned, as well as the citizens, craftsmen, masters, and slaves in the plantation of the Storm Islands, did not know that this was just the beginning of everything. The yellow ghost is about to sweep across the islands. Gretel didn't know everything the magicians did. He is still immersed in the laboratory, working hard on production and research. Work harder. We need vaccines for at least 1 million more people. The indigenous tribes along the coast of the New World and the settlements along the east coast must achieve immune coverage. The Kingdom of Kent, and at least all port cities, must also be immune covered. Anyway, storage and transportation are now much easier. A small test tube of vaccine can cover hundreds of villages. Greet, you can treat me like an old scalper. How could that be possible? Lin An quickly handed over a glass of ice-cold sparkling water. Isn't it that your spell is too difficult and everyone hasn't learned it yet? Alas, it's not difficult to identify the bloodline spell, but it's really difficult to pick out a piece of it and then use this piece to target the disease-causing factor. I'm here so far, the success rate of spell casting is not more than half. Gretel, get away. I don't want to drink ice-cold sparkling water. Don't drink Binqualuo. I don't need Fiazai happy water to increase my energy. If you really become a fat nerd, Cirero will be unhappy. Too much free sugar is bad for the human body. Just give me a cup of plain water, or add 2 tea leaves. He completed today's production share, watched the necromancers take it for random inspection, and then walked calmly into the meditation room. Turn up the element concentration, adjust your mental state into a semi-meditative state, stretch out your hand, and touch rows and rows of test tubes. Standard concentration of chicken embryo vaccine, diluted 1:1. Standard concentration of chicken embryo vaccine, diluted 1:5. 110 dilution. 120, 1:50, 1:100. According to the experience of spell identification of blood potassium, blood sodium, and blood calcium, the signs of the same substance in different concentrations shown in distinguished bloodline change are the same color but different shades of light. So, if you want to identify the viral load in the vaccine, theoretically, you can also use this method. Vaccines of different concentrations are artificially prepared, identified using magic, and the brightness of the magic light is recorded. In the future, if you encounter something that has not been identified, you can shoot it with a spell and you will know what range the concentration is in. Well, the same principle can also be used to identify the viral load in the human body. What is the virus titer for which disease course, what is the virus titer for which disease course, and what high virus titer is infectious, all can be measured and recorded in this way. Alas, when we first started researching vaccines and conducting large-scale human experiments, we didn't keep blood samples for each course of the disease. It's a pity. You should write down your research ideas in a paper and leave it to the next director of the institute to remind them of this research direction. Virus concentration identification is one of Greet's research directions, but it is not his main research direction. After recording the magic light of the vaccines at various concentrations, Greet turned his attention to the various blood samples he had saved. Someone, come here and bring me 100 blood samples from the blood sample bank. Starting from the time when we first started researching, we will take them in order. A necromancer immediately responded and left. Thank God, the Plague Lord was lazy and didn't go to the blood sample library to get it himself. He asked us to run errands for him. If he went to get it himself, he might find out which blood sample was missing half a tube or something. Greet naturally didn't know what he was thinking. He didn't have a habit of throwing detecting thoughts to researchers in his own research institute whenever he had something to do. He sat in the meditation room, cupping his chin and thinking. The reason why live attenuated vaccines can be screened out for viruses is that they continue to mutate and iterate. These mutations determine that they belong to different strains and have different virulence and transmissibility. However, they are still the same virus. Using identify bloodline, can it be so determined? Gretel doesn't know. Greet doesn't even know what the criteria for past life testing are, and how similar the genes must be to be identified as the same virus, or even the same strain. Greet also didn't know how similar the images given by distinguished bloodline would be. Greet still doesn't know if it's possible to find enough identity in these images to identify them as the same virus. The only thing Greet could think of was to pile up data. Heap data, hard work heap data, extreme heap data. If 100 copies are not enough, then 1000 copies, if 1000 copies are not enough, then 10,000 copies. When the current ones in the research institute are used up, they can randomly pick up a strain, find dozens of chickens or mice, and use epidemic technique to infect them. If you have enough samples, you might be able to make it, but if you don't have enough samples, you definitely can't make it. Greet, work harder. Go. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. There are only 8 days left until the monthly pass. I just took a look and found that Cat now has 966 starting monthly passes. Can you get 1000 votes today? It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1051. Get 100 blood samples. 100 more blood samples. Come again. Well, I don't need the blood sample for now. Make me a glass of glucose water. It needs to be warm. Don't add ice. Don't drink iced drinks when your body is too hot. The esophagus is so close to the aorta, and a bone is stuck, which can directly poke the aorta. If you drink a large gulp of iced drinks, the arteries may spasm due to cold and the heart may stop. Gretaza was in the research institute, busy scanning and analyzing viruses every day, hoping to find a way to use magic to analyze and lock the virus. While he was working hard, other friends were also working hard. Hucka, wheeze, I'm so tired. Bernard was sweating profusely and climbed up the mountain step by step, holding onto his oak stick. Yes, it's Greet's oak staff. He lives in the research institute day after day. He can't even see the sun above his head, and can't even step on the soil under his feet. The oak staff was very dissatisfied, and Greet had no choice but to finally lend it to Bernard for use. During this time, Bernard maintained an exercise frequency of climbing to the top of the snow mountain and then coming back down once a week. It's the snow-capped mountain where Greet and Sarah flew up side by side using the dragon flying technique. Bernard climbed it once, and it took him 2 days to reach the top, and another 2 days to slowly descend. Afraid of slipping? Greet used the best stainless steel to make a pair of crampons for his hands, which could be tied to his boots. The transformation spell can be shaped with mental power, which is really convenient. Afraid of falling into a crevice? Greet gave him a feather fall belt, which is automatically triggered and won't die even if he falls. Afraid of mountain avalanches? Are you afraid that you will not be able to get treatment if you are injured? Bernard raised his head, his face changing color. On the top of the hillside, a piece of mist-like snow slipped under his feet, and a large piece of broken ice cracked under his feet and rolled down the mountain. The more it rolls, the more snow it gets, and the more it rolls, the louder it becomes. Gradually, the whole mountain responds. On the top of the mountain, click, 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 snow and mist rolled down like a river. Bernard's face changed color, he kicked and kicked, found a place with solid ground and not too thick snow, and used his strength to lift the oak staff. Master Oak Staff, Master Oak Staff, it depends on you from now on, make sure to save my life. Snow and mist were coming up. In an instant, The oak stick that was deeply rooted in the ground poked out the roots of the tree and plunged hard into the snow-capped mountains. At the top of the tree crown, 10 green leaves shine brightly, turning into a lush crown, supporting a small world. Heavy snow cover. Bernard huddled under the oak tree, turning his head to the side, listening to the snow and dust rolling down outside. Finally, the sound disappeared. He tightened the thick cloth gloves on his hands, and took off the shovel. Hey! Let's dig. Dig out the snow pit, dig out a path, climb to the top of the snow pit, and take a few breaths of air. He grabbed a handful of oak leaves and lifted them up a few times. The oak tree quietly shrank into an oak staff and fell into his hand. Uncle Oak, let's go. On the top of the oak stick, 10 green leaves sway gently, as if smiling. Hey, there is the sun to bask in, there is snow water to drink, there is the extremely blazing sun on the top of the mountain that it has never been exposed to before, and there is the cold, never blown wind to blow. What a great day! As an oak stick, no, as an oak tree with pursuits, it should travel to various places and receive all kinds of sunshine, rain, and dew, in order to grow best. After surviving a crisis, Bernard continued to climb the snow-capped mountains. Step by step, the closer to the top of the mountain, the heavier the steps and the harder it is to breathe. When I was approaching the crater pass, I felt like there were thousands of kilograms of boulders on my body with every step I took, and the stars were flashing. 2 days to go up the mountain, 2 days to go down the mountain, and 3 days to eat, drink, rest, and relax at the bottom of the mountain. 2 more days to go up the mountain and 2 more days to go down the mountain. After this cycle, Bernard gradually felt that his strength was steadily increasing, and it became easier and easier to climb the mountain. Work harder. If you work harder, you can advance. The boss has reached level 10, I can't stay stuck at level 9. Effort. In the next round, try to speed up and reach the top of the mountain in 1 day. Bernard trained hard and fought hard to advance. In comparison, APA's advancement is much easier. Crack, click, click. Click, click, click. The silver moon deer buried its face in the stone trough and ate without raising its head. Lin hugged Mr. Trochka and came out to see him. When he saw that the grey wolf in the stone trough had only half a leg left, he patted its antlers with a smile. APA, are you full today? Do you want more? Hold head high. Appa nodded vigorously. Eat. Eat. Eat hard. What a grey wolf. I, the king of the silver moon deer group, can still eat 3 times more. Greet is a poor man. Before, he was raised on a lot of fresh grass, a lot of bean cakes and oats, and a small amount of eggs, sugar cubes, and meat. He has to run into the wilds by himself, eat berries, eat magic plants, and catch fish from the sea. In vain, he shared the cave full of small white flowers with this guy. Gretel ate it and took it away, without even mentioning improving his food. Fortunately, during this period, perhaps because of someone's treat, Gretel provided him with food and became more and more lavish. Meat. Available every day. Warcraft. At least 1 every day. Sweet sugar cane? No problem, take care of yourself. Various medicinal materials and magic plants? As long as Uncle APA wants to eat, he can eat at least 1 stone every day. Lin N smiled and touched the slightly glowing antlers, picked up the space bag, pointed it at the stone trough and poured it down. In order to come and rescue him, Greet rushed from the east coast to the west coast, and it was Appa who worked hard to carry several people and run at full speed every day. Even for this reason, even if he didn't pay for food, and he didn't have to pay for it, he should still take on the responsibility of feeding Greet while he was busy. Come on, eat. This is the magic crocodile meat that Gretel wants to bring. Skin it and make it into armor. The rest is yours. Click, click, click. No problem. Come on, these are the stone flowers on the surrounding hillsides. Even though they are so small, they grow very fast after absorbing the rainwater. Apa lowered his head, rolled his big tongue, and rolled up a large cluster of stone flowers from the stone trough. After squinting his eyes and chewing a few times, juice splashed everywhere. Creak, creak, creak. There are a little bit of beast crystals, so save some. After a while, the vaccine will be rolled out, and more natives can go into the forest to hunt, and you will have more beast crystals to eat. Boom, boom, boom. On the silver-white deer skin, the tips of the antlers, which are more than 3 meters wide, gradually emit a soft, moon-like light. Appa yawned and lay down on the ground. I feel like I'm about to advance. In the recent period, I've eaten well, slept well, walked a long way, and there are still people fighting with me. I feel like I'm about to advance. Well, I hope it can be a little smaller this time, a little smaller again. When I encounter a difficult road, there is no need for Miss Sarah to shrink me. Her reduction technique is not comfortable at all. Also, it's best if the corners can be reduced individually. I can't get in every time, it's so annoying. Recently, more and more adventurers have come here. Ms. Jasmine finished calculating the accounts for the day and flicked her fingers. On the top of the desk, the lily of the valley that had absorbed the sunshine all day and was emitting soft light dimmed with the snap of her fingers. She leaned back on the wicker chair, stretched hard, and looked at her husband. If you work for another half-month, you should be able to save enough resources for advancement. Then, let's go to the mountains and ask Master Nordmark for help. Why don't you bother him? Mr. Hawthorne scratched his hair and smiled honestly. People are willing to help us casually. It is a favor from them. We are not owed it by nature. If we come to our door, what if he is busy with something and is not free? Isn't that making things difficult for him? Just go and give him something, Ms. Jasmine insisted. They have developed a vaccine, and they thought of sending it all the way to us. Shouldn't we be a little considerate? These days, I have selected a batch of various materials sold by the adventurers. They are large quantities. You can't find such a good one if you send it up. She checked the inventory in the warehouse and smiled with crooked eyes. I'll make some more drinks and snacks, Miss Sarah, she likes to eat the dishes I cook. I also need to prepare a batch of fresh fish, shrimps, and shells, and put them in the space equipment to keep them fresh. They fly them up to eat delicious food. As she muttered softly, the short hair on Mr. Hawthorne's head stood up from the roots to falling down bit by bit. He spread his limbs and sighed forcefully. Oh, you always worry so much about me. If it's for yourself, you won't owe these favors. But for me, you are willing to run all the way there, Jasmine. When I meet you, it is truly the love of my life. Lucky. I'm so lucky to meet you. Ms. Jasmine rummaged in the warehouse for a while, took out a berry, picked it off and stuffed it into her husband's mouth. If it were anyone else, who would be willing to accompany me thousands of miles away if the store is running well? Who would train hard and be willing to accompany me into the woods thinking that I want to find my father? Hey, speaking of which, when will there be news about your father? Didn't Msuge say that she would write a letter back? It's not that fast. Jasmine glanced at her husband angrily. It's hundreds of thousands of miles from here to the southern continent. It would take a month or two for the birds to carry the message. If you add in the time for asking, the elves around you asked around, half a year. It's very fast to have news. While the couple was chatting, Ashuedge was standing at the entrance of the research institute, raising her arms high. A white bird with only a patch of black hair on its head landed in her palm and pecked at the small fish she held with its bright red beak. And with a gentle tap from Ashuedge, a slender blade of grass on the bird's paw automatically loosened, stretched, deformed, and turned into a large green leaf. Dear sister. Glad you found our people again. Although he only has half of his blood, he is still our precious cub. I hope that at your convenience, you can take him to the fertile forest to have a look and receive our orthodox training. As for the elf you are asking about, Hymer Gracia Starry Night, I asked a circle of familiar compatriots and got the following information. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1052. Bernard's advancement is in sight. APA lay on the ground, burying his head in a water tank filled with magic plants and monster meat, ready to replenish his strength at any time. His body was covered with silver light, and he had already begun to make final preparations before advancing. Mr. Hawthorne adjusted his condition and strengthened the exercise of the injured leg to prepare for his advancement. Mr. Trochka had already digested half of the golden feathers, and half of the shafts were left bare. Those who heard it cried, and those who saw it were sad. He hid the remaining half of the feather tightly, wrapped it in Lin An's arms, and slept for 22 hours a day. Whether you can advance or not depends on this wave. Go. The stupid master is so weak in combat that he was caught by the female snake. I, the great Mr. Troka, must work hard to advance in order to protect this idiot master. Lin N, forget it Lin N, Lin N hasn't reached the threshold to advance to level 10 yet. Lin plans to work hard in the institute for a few years to find some inspiration. If it doesn't work out, go back to Nevis. During this time, I won't be running around or going out on adventures for the time being. As for Gretel. Gretel is addicted to blood samples and cannot extricate himself. 100 copies, 200 copies, 300 copies. 1000 copies, 2000 copies, 3000 copies. What is Master Nordmark doing? Yeah, what is Master Nordmark doing? The necromancers in the research institute poked their heads around and started talking about it. God knows, they have been working on Gretel for more than a day or two. This period of time is the most confusing. I only saw the blood sample going in and the blood sample coming out. Send a batch of mice over, draw blood one by one, send the mice back, and then send blood samples. Endless centrifugation, labeling, sending samples, storing, centrifuging, labeling, sending samples, storing. We were asked to do this and that before. At least we still knew why we were doing it and what research results we could get from doing it. Now that we do these tasks every day, what can we achieve? SHH, at least we have gained something before. Besides, who doesn't do research for others? When the paper comes out, we will know what direction to work towards. At least we can still use the remaining blood samples used by the Plague Lord once used. The necromancers murmured and complained, but still worked diligently, hoping that the Plague Lord would produce results soon. In terms of research and magic, how important it is to have someone to guide the way. Gretel no longer pays attention to how many blood samples have been collected. He just mechanically casts spells and records, every time he takes 10 blood samples, he sits down and meditates for a while, letting the meditation core work at full capacity, and compares the data. Can identity be found? To what extent can identity be confirmed? How big is the difference? Can this difference be confirmed to be the same virus, or will it be misrepresented to other viruses? You should know that if Identify Ancestry reads the genetic sequence of yellow fever virus, then the difference in genetic sequence between yellow fever virus and other flaviviruses, and between other viruses, may be less than 1%, or even less than 1/10,000th. Be very careful. Gretel confirmed, verified, and overturned, confirmed again, verified again, and overturned again. I don't know how many days it took, and I don't know how many blood samples he took. He finally ran out happily and shouted, "Quick! Help me verify it." With an order, 17 or 8 heads emerged from the surrounding laboratories, 5 or 6 with thick or sparse hair, and more than a dozen with bare heads. The reason why the number of people is wrong is because a magician must bring a golden skeleton. The tops of the heads of golden skulls must be bare and hairless, and there are several heads on the heads of magicians that are also bare and hairless. Of course, these are not important in Gretel's eyes, or in other words, Gretel is not in the mood to pay attention to these. He was beaming with joy and spoke as fast as he could. "Take 10, no, 50 blood samples. They are all left over from the first batch of patients. For each blood sample, use epidemic technique to infect 10 mice, and then send them to me for experiments." "Ah! I want so much again." "Yes, Your Excellency." "Yes, Your Excellency." "Do it right away, Your Excellency." The necromancers flew away. Greed was in a hurry, so everyone simply gathered people to do it. Each person was responsible for 5 blood samples and 50 mice. There were jumbled footsteps and the chirping of mice. Before long, 500 mice and 500 syringes for drawing blood from the mice were neatly placed in front of Greed. Gretel took a deep breath. I closed my eyes, opened them again, and looked at the neatly packed syringes in front of me. For a moment, my heart rate suddenly jumped up. After so many days of research, scanning, recording and verifying countless blood samples, I finally came up with some general rules. This general rule has been successfully verified in a small amount of blood samples before. However, small-scale verification is small-scale verification after all. Whether it can pass the large-scale verification and whether it can lock the yellow fever virus depends on today's test. Distinguish Bloodline Modification, Yellow Fever Special Edition, the first test, begins. The invisible magic wave enveloped the syringe. Greed has 10% glucose water in his left hand and 50% glucose syrup in his right hand, ready for battle. Close your eyes slightly, the image of the spell feedback lights up in the meditation world, and is captured, analyzed, and compared by the meditation core. Confirmed to be the same. It was determined that this blood sample contained yellow fever virus. Again. Again. Comparison of 500 syringes completed. Although the virus in the syringe has certain mutations, if you don't lock the virus with mental power and directly use the epidemic spell to promote the spread, it will inevitably mutate, but the same spell can be used to detect the yellow fever virus. Gretel took a breath, closed his eyes to rest, and drank a bottle of 10% glucose water for himself. Okay, I feel like my consumption has been replenished, and I won't have to drink 50% of that bottle. Oh my god, the 50% glucose syrup is so unpleasant to drink. I really don't want to pour it down my throat unless I have to. After drinking a bottle of glucose water, Greed sat quietly for a while, waited for his blood sugar to rise again, and cast the spell again, aiming at the mice one by one. This time, the method used was not Distinguish Bloodline Change, Special Edition for Yellow Fever, but a targeted killing treatment spell. The mental power connects with the picture of Distinguish Bloodline Change, Yellow Fever Special Edition to target the yellow fever virus. Just like locking down the vaccine picture and stimulating the development of vaccines in a targeted manner, this time, we are targeting the yellow fever virus in a broad sense and inducing targeted killing. Die. Die. All viruses in my definition must die. White light surged across the mouse. 500 mice that had been hit by a disease spell and were lying there dying or alive, all of them were in high spirits and started chirping. All right. All right. It's amazing, it's actually healed. What is this? Group healing? Or group disease removal? I remember that there seems to be no group version of disease removal. The necromancers who were standing in 2 rows on the edge were preparing to recycle the mice, or rather, using the excuse of retrieving the mice as a reason to watch the results of the Plague Lord's spell, they all whispered to each other. Greet's healing technique is very effective and immediate, however, the method of casting it is a bit incomprehensible. There is no spell, there seems to be no gesture, the light of the spell is very thin, the fluctuation of the spell is extremely weak, the effect of the spell. The spell effects and fluctuations are completely out of proportion. Gretel smiled slightly. The targeted virus killing technique is effective, which shows that the virus picture he summarized does have universal significance. Moreover, the mice's spirits improved, which also proves that this method can be used to treat yellow fever. Of course, it can only kill viruses. When yellow fever progresses to the later stages, it will cause damage to the liver, kidneys, cardiovascular system, and other tissues, as well as damage to the internal environment caused by endotoxins. Killing the virus will not cure the disease. It also needs constant conditioning or treatment to pull it back. However, after all, it can be cured by pulling it back, and there is no need to continue to fight against the ever-proliferating virus. Here, help me verify it again. He clapped his hands, raised his face with high spirits, and turned to the 2 rows of necromancers. Take blood samples from these mice and use them to infect other mice to see if the infection can be successful. They will be randomly divided into groups, half of them will be infected with disease, and half will be infected with injection. The results will be summarized for me. Everyone, please work harder. Once this wave of verification is completed, you can write your paper. By the way, find some more tobacco for me. I want fresh, living tobacco plants, as well as diseased plants with mottled and dirty leaves. I want both. The necromancers cheered a little, commanded the skeleton to pick up the mouse cage, picked up the syringe tray, and flew away. You can write a paper now. It's about to bear fruit. Following the previous vaccines, new results are coming. And this wave seems to be a new spell, maybe they can learn a new spell, for free. The Lord of the Plague has always been generous in this regard. He has never been picky about the auxiliary staff around him, charging them a few small sums of money to learn spells. Well, of course, whether these necromancers can learn healing techniques is another question. Greet watched them leave with a smile, stretched hard, and turned to his study. Put out pen and paper and start writing. A method to identify tiny pathogenic factors using identifying ancestry. In previous studies, we have shown that there is a disease-causing agent that is smaller than bacteria and cannot be observed with a microscope. Currently, we are trying to use Identify Bloodline to identify them, and have achieved certain results. The key spell models and the corresponding images of the spell models are as follows. In the general spell feedback of Distinguish Bloodline, the points of the picture are as follows. Put down the pen, open the golden treasure box, grab the chip and record it. Well, it's good to have a chip. Papers involving complex images can be copied directly with mental power. Finally, he doesn't need to draw them one by one. We have noticed that the causative factors of yellow fever will undergo subtle changes during the iteration process in animals and humans. These changes are presented in the spells, which are different pictures. However, these pictures have similar parts as follows. Put down the pen and type again. After entering, continue writing. After locking in these similar images, we were delighted to discover. Bang 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 bang. Bang 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 bang. The footsteps were messy and rapid. The necromancer who was doing the verification couldn't wait to knock on the door, so he shouted in the corridor. Your Excellency, Lord of the Plague. The results are out. None of the mice spread using plague technique were infected. Although he had expected it, Greet still had a happy smile on his lips. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of. I'm so happy that Shanghai has finally cooled down. I was so happy to finally get 1,000 votes yesterday. It's not that difficult to open a hospital in another world, right? Author, Geoland 2020. Chapter 1053. Speaking of which, what has our Plague Lord been studying recently? Have no idea. In another study room of the Research Institute, the 18th level Archmage of the Necromancy Department, Archmage Haynes, was chatting with his disciple, the 15th level Archmage Jennings. As the high-level mages of Black Crow Swamp who will definitely take over this research institute after Gretel leaves, they have the responsibility and obligation to understand Gretel's research ideas and organize and guide other magicians to continue their research. The problem is that in the first half of Gretel's research, until the vaccine was developed, they were still able to understand the ideas. In the second half of the research, although Gretel had been communicating with them, for the two archmages. Eyes, got it? Ears, I hear every word clearly. Brain, apart from memorizing every word, there seems to be no way to summarize it. By the way, it has been more than half a year since he started researching here. How have you summarized the content of the research in the past 6 months? Will it help you advance? It seems there is, but it seems there isn't. Archmage Jennings shook his head with a grimace. Most of the work in the institute can be done by ordinary people, and it does not even require a magician. A small part of it requires a magician to do, and that can only be done by a low-level magician. Based on these studies, several very practical and highly effective low-level magics can be developed. However, a level 15 magician like him wants to advance through these low-level magics. I always feel like it's useless, but I always feel that there should be a very profound truth in this. If you understand it thoroughly, you can take a big step forward, but I can't see where. If Greed heard the chat between their master and apprentice, he would definitely feel sad. He couldn't see it because he didn't write it out, he didn't write it out because he couldn't write it. There are some things that he has not proven experimentally in this world, so it is difficult to write about them. There are some things that he has not figured out himself. At this moment, he is racking his brains, skipping things like virus, DNA, RNA, gene, whole genome sequencing and the like, trying to write this paper in a logical and coherent manner, people can understand. After locking in these similar pictures, we were happy to find that based on this locking, we can use relatively low-level magic, in other words, at a relatively small cost, to eliminate the causative factors of yellow fever without having to rely on remove disease. This treatment method has been verified on 250 mice. The specific experimental methods are as follows. In the future, large-scale verification will be carried out. Gretel's writing is full of wind, and the more he writes, the smoother he becomes. After writing the experimental methods and results, future verification methods, and entering the data and tables, he took a deep breath and finally came to the last paragraph of this paper. The author speculates that this method of identifying pathogenic factors using identifying lineage can be used to search for other pathogenic factors of similar size when studying other diseases, that is, those that can pass through a filter that is sufficient to block bacteria and cannot be observed with a microscope. The causative factors. Of course, given that this causative agent often changes and iterates, we need to study it very carefully, and accumulate an extremely large amount of data to be able to lock in the picture of a certain causative agent without distinguishing one from another. Confused? Furthermore, every once in a while, it is necessary to conduct repeated analysis and comparison of the causative factors of existing diseases. In order to prevent such causative factors from changing greatly and not being recognized by magic, our treatment the means failed. Almost done, right? Well, that's pretty much it for the research content. Gretel nodded to himself and began to write the suggestion section. He is confident that even if his suggestions cannot be implemented for the time being, they should be paid attention to by the Parliament and carefully studied by relevant personnel. In view of the fact that using distinguished bloodline to target pathogenic factors and kill them requires additional training and delicate mental control, The author recommends developing corresponding spells and making a treatment instrument that integrates distinguished bloodline and killing. If we can identify all bacteria, parasites, and other pathogenic factors that cause epidemic diseases, enter them one by one into treatment equipment, and carry out universal killing, then we will take a powerful step towards becoming the controller of the plague. Step. From now on, the so-called plague night is no longer a natural disaster that will destroy the world. We have enough power to fight against it? Gretel stopped writing and took a breath, his heart pounding. He soon discovered that such a fierce heartbeat was not due to the excitement of finishing the paper, nor the excitement of seeing the prospects of research. Around you, the elements began to stir and roll. There is an invisible wind coming from the void, and powerful energy is surging silently, trying to flow into the body. Want to advance? Are you finally going to advance? Greet was a little surprised. But he did not put down his pen to advance. Instead, he raced against time to write the last paragraph. Of course, when we get results, we also have more questions to ask. For example, what does this disease-causing agent look like, and why can't it be seen under a microscope? In other words, is there any way to increase the magnification of the microscope to try to see them? Or, even if the magnification of the microscope is increased to the limit, they are still invisible. What is the reason why they are invisible? Why can't identify bloodline see them? Distinguish bloodline. What are the images you see, and why do you get these images? By extension, identifying bloodline can identify blood type, race, potassium, sodium, and calcium in the blood. What is the principle? Let's break this spell into its various parts. What is the power stimulated by each part? Why can these stimulated powers form a picture in our meditation vision? Or, can we try other ways to try to see these disease-causing factors? For example, try to illuminate them with a tiny electron stream, just like light illuminates an object, and analyze the shadow produced by the electron stream to guess its shape. This should be almost done, right? At this point in writing, the research hypotheses, argumentation process, research conclusions, summary, and outlook are all completed, right? The key also points out several important research directions, such as the wavelength of light waves. Objects smaller than the wavelength of light waves will be bypassed by the light and will not be seen. For example, the idea of microscopy and electron microscopy, senior sister, it's up to you. For example, the essence of identifying bloodline is something like a liquid chromatograph. What is the nature of the light waves, or electromagnetic waves, or other waves, it emits, and how does it interact with the blood? If you analyze it further, you may be able to directly find DNA and gene chains. The big guys in the parliament are all relying on you. I hope that by following this paper, I can get a few more explosive results. Maybe when I return to Nevis, the microscope and electron microscope will reveal the chromosomes. Someone is playing with DNA. Just thinking about it makes me happy. Greet put the endless ink pen in his pocket and rushed out to the meditation room. Well, the drafting work is over here. As for citations, acknowledgements, supplementing data, correcting typos, etc., they are all left to other people. For example, Lynn is good. Go ahead and upgrade. The door to the meditation room slammed shut. Not long after, the attention of Archmage Hines and Archmage Jennings followed, and they looked at each other. Is this an advanced level? How long ago was he last advanced? It seems that when he set off for the New World, he had just reached level 9, when we rushed to the New World, he was at level 10 when we saw him. From then to now, only a little over half a year has passed. Last time, I said that I swallowed part of the power of an indigenous god and was able to advance. What about this time? It's not necessarily because the power I swallowed last time hasn't been fully digested, right? If it really can't be digested, can I give it to you? He was so full that he wouldn't have waited until now to advance. So this is the result of this research? Is this result so powerful that it can allow a 10th level mage to advance to the 11th level in more than half a year? I don't know. Let's take a good look at the paper when it comes out. Maybe we will stay in this research institute for a few more years. In the meditation room, Gretel has opened up his own meditation world. From level 10 to level 15, it is the process of the blending of the meditation world and the real world, and the initial substantive process. If this process goes perfectly, there is hope that we can go one step further and hit the legend. Like Sister Philby, the meditative world emerges outside the body and can directly read the movement of electron flow. Like the Lord of Thunder, the meditation world is completely materialized and can even form an independent small world. Gretel was extremely envious. He also wants a portable microscope. Need another photometer. I need a portable mass spectrometer. If possible, we need a portable tertiary hospital to put all the people in and work. To reach such a state, every step must be taken steadily. Greet unfolded his own meditation world and let it expand its boundaries. At the same time, he tried hard to recall the information he had read and the warnings he had heard before setting off from Nevis and when his senior brother came this time. The direction of the materialization of the meditation world depends on your understanding of this world. The broader your understanding is, the richer your meditation world will be. The closer your understanding is to reality, the more difficult it will be for you to mobilize your power. The lower. So, at this stage, magicians must walk more, see more, and visit the entire world as much as possible. Don't be limited in your thinking, and see how big this world is. It is necessary to leave enough possibilities for change. Humanity's research and understanding of the world are always progressing. There are many magicians who cannot change their understanding in the face of new research results. Those who meditate on the world are shaken, conflicted, and even dead. Don't be anxious, take your time. Gretel slowly closed his eyes. Since I came to this world, everything I have seen, heard, and every inch of land I have set foot on over the years has flowed through my heart little by little. The small city of Heartland, and the countryside surrounding Heartland City. Nearby counties, coasts, Nevis, the royal capital, Ioland, the entire kingdom of Kent. Blackgate Peninsula, the Dragon's Nest in the extreme north of the peninsula, the Great Wilderness, the northern part of the New World, the central part of the New World. The map seen in the Parliament, the Old World, the Kingdom of Brolin, the Kingdom of Rhine, the Holy See of Radiance, and the Black Forest and the Orc Kingdom beyond. The map of the world appeared in the Golden Dragon's hand, the volcanoes lighting up the sky in the far east, the Black Continent, the southern part of the New World, and the Elf Island that he didn't know where yet. This world is so big, so big. I didn't expect to have to write a paper when writing a novel. Please subscribe, ask for monthly tickets, ask for recommendation votes, ask for book reviews, ask for all kinds of